Welcome to toy-polloi. Parental guidance. This video contains scenes of Lego destruction.
Hello and welcome to another video from toy-polloi, and in this video we're going to start the restoration on this vintage G.I.Joe or Action Force Killer Whale hovercraft. Now this was very kindly recently donated to me by Dave Blade Lawson, and it came with quite a load of parts, but there's also a whole load of things that are broken on it. In fact, this is the bag of parts it came with, and I've been sort of slowly working my way through trying to find what's wrong and what's broken, and it seems that the Killer Whale often suffers with quite a few sort of common issues. The main ones being the rear propellers and sort of fans and fins all get broken, so I've got to sort out a way of either finding replacements or fixing up the broken bits that I've got. Then there are a whole load of other things on it that seem to break quite easily. A lot of the hinges and stuff like that, which are very common on these old vehicles, get very brittle and snap off, and I think most of those sort of areas are broken on this one. In fact, if we just have a look at the front here, there should be a panel that flaps down, and you can see there are hinges missing on this side and part of the hinge is missing on this side, so all of that needs replacing. We have quite a few other areas that are fine. Obviously you can see these guns work quite nicely, and actually they come with all the bits, so we can just remove those before we get on with the cleaning. It has one of the little guns here on this section, but then the glass is missing at the front here, the glass is broken here. It's just generally sort of lots of little areas, so I think the first thing I want to do is actually give it a good clean. So we're going to remove all the parts that we can. As you can see, most things do unclip quite easily, so we can remove that little gun turret and gun. We can remove the other one on that side. Likewise, this gun here should just lift off. And just take off everything we possibly can, and then we are going to take it apart. And the reason I want to take this apart is because it rattles, and I'm convinced there is something inside it. If I tip it, can you hear? There are things moving about inside it. Now, I don't think anything is broken on this. What I think has happened is over the years, you know, Dave has obviously played with it a lot and put toys and things inside it, and some of those have gone deep inside it and have never come out. So I think there might be some weapons or even maybe bits of the vehicles inside it. So the first thing to do is actually to take it fully apart, and we'll see what those bits are. So there's just a couple more pieces to remove. These little sort of engine covers on either side. I'm not sure if this will unclip without sort of causing damage, so I'm going to leave that one in. That is missing the cockpit glass there. There's a little switch there that also can come out, but I think we can just sort of leave that for a moment. It should fall off when we take everything else out. But really, we need to take this apart and see what's inside. It will also make it an awful lot easier to clean. Now, I'm going to show you quite close up here so you can see just how filthy this thing is. It really has been left, I would say, in someone's loft for a very long time and has just slowly covered in dirt. So the cleaning process on this is going to take quite a while. But let's open it up and we'll see what's inside it. To open this Killer Whale up, all you're going to need is a Phillips screwdriver. I also have a little pot here to put all the screws in, and if we turn this vehicle over, you can see on the bottom you heard that bit move inside again. There's definitely something in here. There are 10 screw holes, so I've got to remove 10 of these screws, and I'm hoping we can just lift the bottom of this vehicle off. So let's get unscrewing and we'll see what's inside. Okay, so that's all 10 screws removed, which means we can just lift off this bottom section and turn it over, see what's in there. Nothing in there, that is just dirty, lots of grass and stuff, so I'll move that to one side. That will be much easier to clean now that we've got that out. Now there is a little blue hat there, and to me that looks like the Space Force Space Pilot helmet from the Action Force line. So that's one thing that was in there. Oh, actually there's a gun as well. I can just see that there. And there is a gun. I'm not quite sure whose gun that is, so if anyone knows, drop me a line. So there we go. That's the noises that were inside this vehicle. The two little things. I can't don't think there's anything more in it. There's a lot of grass. I can just tip that out. You can see. Now we can start taking this apart fully. So that's the little switch that does the launcher mechanism on the front there. So I'll just put that to one side. I think we should be able to remove a few more areas. This section here, which is this sort of motor that fires the propellers at the back, is held in with clips, and if you were to try and remove that from the outside, you'd end up breaking the clips. But again, now that we've got this open, you can see there are just 4 clips at the bottom. I reckon I can just push those very gently with my fingers. We can unhook that whole section like so. There we go. We can remove that. Again, it's full of grass. There's all bits of grass coming out here, but that means we can give that a clean separately. Inside that looks pretty reasonable, so we'll just clean that one separately. And it also might be quite nice to take all of this top section, the green section, off as well, because there are some areas that will be quite awkward to clean if I don't. So I think, again, this is held in with clips. You can see all the clips around here. If I work my way around those clips, we should be able to unhook this top section. But let's do this very gently. I don't want to break any of these clips. It may not be possible because this plastic gets quite brittle with age, but we can certainly give it a go. That one is quite loose, so let's start at that end. Oh yeah, those 2 are out. Let's try this bottom one. Yeah, those 2 are out. It's just a case of going very slowly with these sorts of things. You don't want to push it too much and snap these things. These ones at the back do seem a little bit more awkward, so I'm going to get a knife and see if I can just gently shift those with a knife. So hang on 1 second. Oh, well, there you go. With a little bit more coaxing, I've actually managed to get that last one out, and there we go. We've got the top off. Not the neatest way of doing things for sure, but nothing is broken, and I've managed to get that all back into the sort of component parts, which is certainly going to make it an awful lot easier to clean, which is what we're going to do next. Every part of this, as you can see, is really very dirty, so I'm going to get a whole bowl of hot soapy water and give this a thoroughly good clean. I'm going to try and avoid touching too many of the stickers, because there are still some stickers on here that are in reasonable condition, so I don't want to get those too wet. But then there's a lot of sort of old sticker residue that I'll get off as well. If that doesn't come off with hot soapy water, then we'll use a bit of lighter fluid on that. But in general, I think hot soapy water will clean the bulk of this up pretty nicely. So let's get started. Most things actually have cleaned up pretty well. I'll just get using hot soapy water. There are still a few sticker residue marks that you can see here along this edge. Actually, if I turn this around, there's also some paint just there where it's obviously been scuffed against something and more sticker residue marks. So to get rid of those, I'm going to use lighter fluid, which is something I've shown many times on this channel. So a little bit of lighter fluid onto a kitchen towel, and then we can remove these sticky residue marks. Doesn't take very long at all. If they're very old, they take a little bit of sort of rubbing just to sort of shift them, but on the whole it comes away very easily. You can see this sticky mark sort of dissolving as we go. So just going to get rid of all of those, and I'm hoping this will also work on the paint, because the paint is just a scuff here. If we turn this round, not quite sure what paint it is, don't really know after all these years. Just a bit of a buff like that. Oh yeah, it's all coming off. You can see it's removing quite nicely. So I'm just going to go around this ship quickly with a bit of lighter fluid just to clean up these marks, and then we can start restoring it properly. One of the first things I think we should deal with on this hovercraft is actually put the wheels on the bottom, because without the wheels it really just sort of scratches every surface you put on. Now I have seen that wheels are fairly hard to come by for this. They just sort of clip in place. You can see here they're supposed to clip into these bits that then rotate around. None of the clips are actually broken on the bottom of this, it's just that the wheels are all missing. And I've been pondering what I could do to sort of make some replacement wheels for this, and then it sort of occurred to me that a couple of years back I did a project where I was restoring a Cyborg's Cybo Interceptor, which is just a sort of a small weird toy made by a company called Dennis Fisher, and for that I bought some wheels that were used on model aeroplanes, and I so had a quick rummage in my pot and I've actually found that bag of wheels, and these are them, and they look like they were going to be perfect. Now I picked up 6 of these to work on the project, and I actually have 4 left. I think we can modify them some way. They should fit in very nicely. These I picked up off eBay. They were incredibly cheap. They came from China, and these the diameter of them is 25 millimeters. So if you need to get some for yourself, then just have a look on eBay. They come with a little plastic inner and then these sort of foam rubber tires, and I'm thinking that with a little bit of modification and a bit of Lego we can make a new wheel that will slot into this gap. So let's get started, and we'll try and construct something out of this Lego antenna and this little model aeroplane wheel. Now we're going to use the Lego aerial to make an axle that's going to clip into the clips that are left on the bottom of here, but as you can see this Lego aerial is actually too small, but that's actually fine. I'm not concerned about that. We can easily sort of thicken this up with some tape. What we're really concerned about is whether we can get these actual wheels to sit on there. I think we can. Lego antennas are generally all sort of work on the same sizes, so I know that these are 3 millimeters. So what I'm going to do is drill some 3 millimeter holes into the middle of all of these wheels. I have my pin vise here and I have a 3 millimeter drill bit. I actually want the holes to be slightly larger than 3 millimeters because I want the wheels to run quite smoothly on this. I don't actually want them to sort of be firmly attached to this axle. The axle is going to be firmly held in here, and I want the wheels to run nice and freely on this, so I want the holes to be slightly larger than 3 millimeters. But let's start with a 3 millimeter hole, and then we can always enlarge it with a little bit of a file there. So let's get drilling. I've now got all my wheels ready, so here is one of them. You can see the hole is now larger in the centre, and I can put this Lego antenna through and the wheel rolls quite freely. So now what you've got to do is to modify this Lego antenna to fit within these little clips. So what we're going to do is just going to measure the distance between those 2 clips, because there's actually some little sort of holding bars at either end to stop the axle sliding left and right. So we're going to measure the distance between those 2 holding bars, which is 22 millimeters. We can now cut this to be 22 millimeters long. So I'm just going to hold that on the end of my ruler, make sure that I've got it at 22 millimeters. Then I get my plastic nippers and we'll chop the end of that off like so. We can just do a test fit on here. This is very loose, it doesn't actually hold in place, but at least we can sort of test that that fits, so it does. Now we need to make it so that it actually clips into those 2 clips, and the simplest way to do that is actually just to wrap some tape around the end of this Lego to make it a bit thicker. So I'm going to put the Lego sort of bit onto the wheel just so you can work out roughly where the middle is. I'm going to make a couple of marks with my scalpel here, just little sort of cut marks, just so that I can see how far in the tape can go, because the tape will also hold the wheel in the centre. So I've now got some little marks on there. I'm going to take some sticky tape like this, just cut off a short length of it. We don't need a huge amount because the actual sort of difference between the radius of this antenna and the radius of that hole is very minimal. But I'm going to take the aerial and I'm going to just wrap the end of it with this sticky tape. And I want to do this quite neatly, so try and get it all lined up. We can just roll this around a few times. Now this first one's going to be the easiest one because you don't have the wheel in the way. So I'm going to guess that that is probably about as much tape as you need. It doesn't need to be that much thicker, as I say, it's just only a slight difference. So we'll just trim that off. And I'm going to get a scalpel and we'll just cut the excess tape off. and we can do a little test fit. So I'll just put that in here and see. Oh yeah, that now is sort of fairly firmly held in place. So the next trick is to do exactly the same but with the wheel in place. I'm going to push the wheel through and we're going to wrap a bit of tape around this end, and then hopefully that will hold in place, and I'll just have to make 4 more of them, or 3 more of them, shall I say. Again, just take a small length of sellotape, like so, and we will again neatly wrap this around the end, and we can then just cut the excess off. I'm still guessing the amount I need to put on. It's just sort of doing it by eye until it looks about the same as the other side. I think that should do it. So let's trim this off. And again, we'll get the scalpel and cut the excess off. So that wheel still freely spins in the middle, and hopefully we can slot this in place here, like so, and there we go, we've got a replacement wheel. So just got to make 3 more, and then the hovercraft will be able to hover and roll around again. Okay, that's the last one made, so I've got the other 3 already installed. Let's just install this final one in the back there. Now all of these roll quite nicely. Let's give this a go. I'm going to turn this over and we'll see how well that moves around. Yeah, I don't think that's too bad at all. These wheels are sort of a strange construction because the way they sort of move, you've all got to be in the right direction to make it want to roll forward. But, oh yeah, that rolls very smoothly indeed. I'm really very happy with those. As you can see, simple fix using some aeroplane sort of model wheels and a couple of bits of Lego. You can make some quite nice replacement wheels for this killer whale. I think that's good enough. We can move on to the next part of this restoration.
Now you know, and knowing is half the battle.
Now we've got the wheels on, I think the next thing we're going to do is this front panel that is supposed to flip up here. I have the panel, but as you can see, one of the little tabs has snapped off, little pegs on one side have snapped off, so this won't actually hold in place. I'm guessing it's supposed to go in there and then fold up and just sort of, I'm not quite sure how it's supposed to clip. There are these little clippy pieces here which look like they should sort of hold on to something, but that may be when we put the ship back together, those will sort of clip in place. But for now we need to repair this hinge, and to do that we are going to use another piece of Lego. So I've gone into my little Lego parts pot and I've picked out another Lego aerial. This is a nice long grey aerial, and these are nice and flexible, and these are thinner than the normal sort of 3mm antenna that we use to make the wheel axles, but just as luck would have it, they are pretty much the same diameter as that little peg that's missing there. So we're going to modify the end of this and stick a new piece on. Now this plastic works incredibly well with plastic weld. So the plastic weld dissolves the surface of this and then sort of will bond it to another type of plastic, which is Lego plastic, and we can just make a new peg out of that. So I'm going to just carefully trim off the remains of this. I don't think we can use any of that original one. We want to create a sort of relatively flat surface, and we can then stick a new piece on top of that. So time to get the plastic nippers out, and we'll do a little modification on this, and then we will plastic weld this all in place. So firstly we're going to remove the remains of that little tab. I don't think there's much we can use on that, so I'm just going to carefully trim that off with the plastic nippers. Try and make a nice flat surface. In fact, actually, if I leave that slightly proud and then get a file, I can file a slight groove into that, which this will sit into, and it'll give a nice sort of larger surface area for the plastic weld to work on. So I'm just going to file using a round needle file. You can see this is a round file, a little groove into that, just to give a nice large amount of surface area. It's very soft plastic, so incredibly easy to work with, but just a little bit of a groove in there. I don't know if that will focus. I think that will work quite nicely. Yeah, that looks good. I can just hold this in place and we'll see. Oh yeah, that's going to fit Yeah, that's going to work really well. So now we can trim off a small section of this. We don't need a huge amount. I'm using a grey one. They come in all sorts of colours. I've got black ones as well, but I think the grey is going to match closest to the original colour. I don't really want to paint these, so let's just do it like that. And I'm not going to trim this to the right length at the moment, because then I've got something that I can hold while I'm doing the plastic welding. But you can see if I put that in place, starts to look much like the original. So let's get this welded in place and we'll give it a go. Right, so here is the plastic weld. You can pick this up at most model shops, or you can buy it online. Get some on a brush, and I'm going to quite carefully paint it onto this area. And you want to get it sort of neatly put on. You don't want too much spilling out. We've got a little droplet on there. And then get the Lego piece, and I'll hold that in place. And it should bond fairly quickly, but to get a full bond you're going to have to leave it for about an hour, because you want everything to evaporate so that it's a really strong bond. But almost immediately I can feel that that has set quite nicely. I'm going to put a little bit more just around the edge, just to make sure it's fully joined on, and then we'll leave that, trim it down, and we'll give that a go. But that to me looks like that's going to work really quite nicely. Okay, that has had plenty of time to dry, so we can now trim it to the same length that the other one is. It looks like it's just slightly longer than the edge of the board, so I'm going to just trim that down, leave it a little bit long. Again, just a pair of plastic nippers, trim that off. These little pieces are very much worthwhile keeping, because you never know when something like that will come in handy. So I always put the bits that I trim off back in my parts pot, because at some point I may need it. So we've got that trimmed down, feels good. Let's bring the front of the Killer Whale in, and we will try and drop this in place. So I think I can lift this up slightly just to hook those pieces in, rather than bending the plastic. And look at that, that works really quite nicely, and we can push that up. I'm guessing when we get the top section in place, that will hold up, but for the moment at least we have a hinge that works.
P-O-Y, P-O-L-L-O-I.
Now the last fix I want to show in this first part of the restoration is to fix these front hinges that the ramp attaches to. Now quite often it seems that these are snapped off. You can see here the bottom part of this one is snapped off, and really there's not a lot you can do to fix that. I was thinking there wasn't a lot to do, but again we've gone into my little Lego pot and I've found these lovely little clips. Now you can pick these up in multiple colours. I've just happened to have some in black. I'm not quite sure of the name of them, but I will put a link or sort of a name over the screen now so you can see the Lego brick number, because these are very useful to have, and this is what we're going to use to make a new sort of hinge. But again, as luck would have it, they clip very nicely over the pegs on this landing ramp, so we're going to use that to construct something new. Now I have already actually attached one. You can see it here. It's not the easiest of things to do, and it's certainly not going to be the easiest of things to show, so I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to cut away all the bits I need and modify this, and then I'll show you the two pieces that I've made so you can see exactly what I've done. But you can see on this one it does glue in place quite nicely. Again, this is stuck in with plastic weld, and once it's in place it fits very nicely. So I think really the easiest thing for me to do is just to modify this, and rather than going through every stage. But essentially I'm going to be using plastic nippers and files to cut out a piece here and line this up so that it fits quite sort of neatly where the original clips would have been. And I'm going to have to modify this slightly, because you can see where the little clip is next to it is a slight raised bar, and that actually gets in the way of this little peg on here. So we're going to have to sort of trim down one side so that it is all completely flat. There's no sort of bulge there on that one side. But again, it's pretty sort of simple stuff to do, but once it's done I think this should hold on quite nicely. You can see what I mean here. That raised section just gets in the way slightly, so we've got to trim that all off. So I'm going to get modifying and I'll stick it in place, and you can see the end results. But really this is quite a complicated fix, not something that I would recommend that everyone has a go at, but if you're sort of confident with sort of using plastic nippers and cutting and trimming toys, then it can be done. So let's get started. So after a fair amount of filing and modifying, you can see I've now cut away a section of the front part of the killer whale here, and then this is the modified little Lego sort of clip or claw, and that just sits quite neatly where the original clip would have been. You can see that's the one I've previously done, and all we've got to do is sort of line it up, and we'll put a bit of plastic weld around. I can just do a quick test fit of this, so I'm going to slot that in that side. I'll just hold that one in place here, like so, and we can clip that on. So you just want to line it up so it's all sort of nice and neat and straight at the front there. I think that will do the job pretty well. Really, this is the first time I've ever done this, so if things do go wrong, and I sort of change my mind as I sort of modify stuff. But you can see bits of Lego are always the first place to go if you want to do a fix of any sort, and especially on these little clips, they do get quite brittle as time goes by. So this Lego stuff is a good way of repairing them. So let's get this one plastic welded in place, and we'll put the top section of the killer whale back together, and we can test that this ramp actually works. So let's glue this one in. Before we can test if this front hinge fix has worked, we actually need to put the top of the killer whale back in place. So I've just prepped up the top part. So I put on this all of the pieces that aren't broken. So we've got the guns here in the place, the engine covers, these little sort of gun turrets, put all of those back in place. We're now going to clip this back on, because obviously it took me quite a while to unclip it, so I only want to do this process once. I've got to remember as well, this little control panel sits in here. There's two little sort of notches on either side, and you put that on there slightly angled. That was a bit that sort of confused me for a while when I first got this. I wasn't quite sure how it fitted in, but it actually has to be fitted in before you put the top piece on. So we'll get the top piece, we'll drop it in place, line up all of these clips, and we can clip the top section down, and hopefully we won't have to remove that again. There's also this little button here. I've got to make sure that goes in the hole. I think once we've clipped that down, just clip these in place. Everything sort of lines up. Yeah, that feels good. So I will just put this little button back on the launch mechanism there. Now we can test to see if this has worked. So here we have the front boarding ramp. I'm still missing the inside part of it, but I do have this external parts. At some point I hope to find that. And this clips onto these two new Lego clips that we put there. So I'm going to carefully put them in one side and the other. There we go. Lift that up, that fits in quite nicely, and the ramp goes back down. So those Lego clips do work remarkably well. So I say, sort of all the time when I do fixes, the first thing I will look at is pieces of Lego, because there are so many useful parts, and that has worked remarkably well. We can drop that back in. So that's it for this part of the restoration. I actually feel like we've done quite a lot. I'm really pleased with just being able to get all of this front section really working and the wheels on. It certainly feels like more of a complete vehicle now. And as you can see, I've managed to pick myself up a cutter. I managed to grab this on eBay earlier this week. He cost me £5. He's not in great condition. His pelvis is broken and someone's put a bit of paint around there. But for now, that'll have to do. I was sort of looking, and the prices for cutter in the UK vary from £5 for this one, and people are selling them for sort of £25 to £200 on eBay. So it seems a little bit of a crazy price. Hopefully I'll find a better condition one in time. But for now, this version of cutter will do, and I'll repair the pelvis on this in the next video. I've also got quite a lot of pieces that I still need to find. As you can see, there's bits missing. I have a whole bag of broken pieces here. I think in the next video we're going to sort out fixing the missing glass on this cockpit section. The cockpit glass up here is also broken, and we'll start to work on the missile launchers. You can see here the little arms are broken. I've only got one missile launcher and a few missiles are missing, so I've got quite a few bits to find. But for now, I think the killer whale is starting to look more like a vehicle. The fact I can actually wheel it around on its wheels and the front section works. I've just got to find those last missing pieces on there, and also that little sort of boaty sled thing that slots in there that's fired off by this launcher. As you can see, it's going to be a long-term project, this one. So far, I'm very happy with how this is going, and as always, Lego has saved the day. So if you've enjoyed this first part of the restoration of the killer whale, make sure to tap the subscribe button, also tap the bell to be notified each time I upload a new video, and thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching toy-polloi. Subscribe for more great videos. You can also follow toy-polloi on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram.